Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe,
And I'm Jeff.
and Jeff had a bit of a cold snap in the what had been a warm spate of spring weather, which was
Yeah,
really nice.
indeed. I
Um,
I had to break out a flannel. I'm afraid it's giving a little visual interference to my camera, but I hope that is not too distracting for anybody.
well, it's like the song says, that's amore.
I thought it would be
See,
yeah.
a moire pattern is interference, visual interference. Never mind. You can look it up. It's not
Oh,
supposed
me?
to.
I thought you were explaining it to our audience. I absolutely know what a
Yeah,
moire
yeah, I was. I turned to them. So, yeah. Um, so today we're going to talk about an interesting topic that's been discussed for more than 100, more than 200 years.
Yeah,
Compulsory national service, and what that means, and what it would mean, and what it could mean, and what the pros and cons of that are.
right.
And it seemed to me to be an appropriate topic in an era of debates about nationalism and patriotism and country and service, and it seemed to be relevant to all of those. So I thought it would be a good topic.
Okay, sure. And re recently brought up in Starship Troopers. So,
Oh, yes. Yeah, and we can certainly talk about that and the Heinlein's vision of that, and whether it was a satire or a actual, how much of it was.
yeah.
So anyway, how are you fortifying yourself for the evening's discussion?
Oh, well, I have my sort of usual bourbon and ginger beer concoction with a new bourbon, Lazy River Kentucky bourbon. Um,
Okay.
all right, doesn't blow me away as a brand new flavor experience. It's a straight bourbon whiskey, and that's all I
It's
can really say about it.
a lazy river you wouldn't float your boat in.
Well, I mean, if it's the only river available, I'd certainly take advantage of it. But
Okay.
and you, sir, what's your libation of choice this
I
evening?
have my
Oh,
my Norland whiskey glass, an Irish whiskey, a blended Irish whiskey called Roe and Co. I think I mentioned this before. I was introduced
yes.
to this. We're introduced to this by the Irish hotelier, the owner of a hotel in Manhattan where we stayed. And as we were getting ready to leave, he thanked us for staying and asked how it was. I said, wonderful. And by the way, you have an excellent selection of Irish whiskeys in your bar. He said, well, come have a wee dram with me. And so he held the
Something from me
car.
private selection.
He held the car and he poured this for us. And it's really smooth. I
Hmm.
really like it.
It's got a lovely golden color.
Yes, it's a color
So
I'm quite fond of,
yeah.
actually.
Well,
Sláinte. Oh, that is really nice. Wow. Um, so mandatory or compulsory national service.
yes.
Most people think of that as the draft, and there has
Military
not
service.
military service. Excuse me. There hasn't been a draft since it was um, suspended for 3 months and then canceled outright, which I recall in um, because I had a low draft number in the
Hmm.
draft lottery, and the prior year, which was my freshman year of college, was the year before. Well, that there were it went by calendar year. The lottery went by calendar year.
Right.
And so there were guys who were freshmen with me, but were born in the previous calendar year, which was the last year of the draft and the first year of no student deferments.
Okay.
So they were in class one day and then got their notice and they left,
Yep.
you know. I had a low number, and I remember we were all sitting around looking, listening to the lottery numbers being drawn. I had a low number, but then, and I went for a pre-induction physical, and then the draft was suspended, and then it was canceled outright. And my folks certainly wanted me to stay in college, and I did. But that was the last time it was a draft. But the draft was first started in for the Civil War.
Yeah.
One of the problems with the draft and complaints about it during the Civil War and during the Vietnam War, more so than well, World War One too, was that it was unfairly applied. That people could buy their way out of it. They could get people with money could get the parents had money. They could get draft deferments, student deferments. They could get
They could bribe a
medical
doctor to say they had something like, I don't know, bone
bones
spurs.
for exactly. Um, so there was a lot of unfair fairness in it. Um, compulsory national service would not simply be military service. It would be the equivalent of things like the Peace Corps or the Conservation Corps or other kinds
Right.
of civic, social, environmental works that
Sure.
that people would participate in for 1.5 to 2 years, 2 years, the same term as being drafted if there was, and um, and that it would be for everyone. That there would be, of course, exceptions for people who were unable to, or for some other reason, or but it that's the idea behind it. And there are pros and cons to it. And we can get into discussing those, but I just wanted to introduce the topic generally.
Sure. Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So one of the number one, I think, argument in favor of this is that it gives everyone a stake in the country.
The public
That,
weal.
yeah, what?
The public weal.
Yeah. So,
WEAL.
yes.
An
So,
uncommonly used word these days.
yes. So the, um, I've heard, I've seen several, well, the problem with news coverage of protests and demonstrations is, and we've seen this before in news coverage of any group, they usually pick the people who are either loudest or weirdest or
Yeah.
and but there I've seen several protests, particularly college protests with young people who do not seem to understand what America stands for, what it's supposed to be. Of course, I see that with a lot of older people too, including elected politicians, who don't seem to understand what the values of America are. And um, not to say that the United States is without flaw. It certainly has flaws,
Certainly not.
as any country does, as any project by human beings has flaws.
Hmm.
But actually working for the common good in service would have some benefit to having everybody see a common purpose and pull towards a common good. And that's one
Right.
of the arguments for it, that it would help foster a sense of national unity. I'm not talking about nationalism, but more unity towards achieving the ideals that America espouses. And that's one of the
Yes.
points of it.
This this is one of those things that I can see um, anything there will always be a certain amount of resistance to anything that's compulsory in this
Yep.
country, right? That's just there's a whole segment of the population that doesn't think they should have to pay taxes, doesn't think they should have to contribute to a community fund of any kind, that
Doesn't think
everyone
they,
should be on their own and cut off from any sort of help or assistance.
yes. And we've talked about this before, the myth, and I mean myth in the mythic sense rather than fiction, although it's also that, of
Hmm.
the lone cowboy rides into town and self-sufficient,
Right.
a self-made man, and he rides out into the sunset with just his horse and his saddlebag and his six gun. And the the and we've also talked about the fact that humans evolved as social animals, that the cooperation, collaboration between humans, early humans, led to their survival and evolution. But yes, there are people, the so-called sovereign citizens who you see sometimes on video. I don't
Right.
have to have I'm my own country. I don't have to have a driver's license or license plates or blah, blah,
Well,
Yeah.
you do to use these roads.
Yeah. Which are paid
That's the
for
deal.
supported by taxes, you know,
Yeah, that's
uh,
kind of the deal. You know, the water that comes into your home, the road that runs past your house,
the
you know,
fire department, the police,
yeah, the
the,
internet that you use to get that certificate that says you're a sovereign citizen. That's
yeah,
all funded by public money.
clean air, clean water, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Safe food, assuming that those regulatory agencies still exist in another week or so.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so yes, there are always going to be people who oppose that. I think that the the reason the draft could go through is that there's a exception in wartime, right? Was the way the selective service or the draft laws were constituted under wartime powers. But it could be done. I think it could be done. Or, of course, it might also be shot down by the Supreme Court. And unclear.
Right.
So the idea is, I think we're talking about is not whether it could be done, because we have no way of knowing, but
Sure.
should it be done? Is it a
Right.
good thing to do?
It's advisability. Yeah.
Yes, pros and cons. One of the pros I've seen in the arguments I've read is that students who have delayed their entry into college or post high school training of any sort by a year as a gap year or by military service
Right.
go into college better prepared, both mentally and behaviorally. And given my experience teaching active duty and former military students
Hmm.
as undergraduates, I can say that's absolutely fucking true. They are they are
If you didn't get any discipline at home, you absolutely got some from your sergeant.
Yeah, they are not thinking it's high school. They have been cured of that notion that I've had to explain to undergrads on more than one occasion. who said that's not the way we did it in high school. And I said,
This ain't high school no mo.
no, exactly. Shush. I wanted to, I was, without using the words, I was thinking of, was it Tom Berenger in The
A
Substitute?
substitute.
Uh, I am the, I am the god of
I'm
this
the all powerful
powerful
God of this
god.
universe.
This is my domain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Um,
I'm
so
sure every teacher wants to give that speech at some point or another.
I did once after students had turned in the group project, the first draft of group projects. I told them all, I said, in an elevated tone of voice, I told them to shut up and listen to me. And I said, put down your phones, put down your pencils, put down your, if you still use pencils, put down your, stop looking at your laptops, look at me and listen to me now. I said, the work you turned in was crap. I'm scrapping what I had planned to present to you today, and you're going to work in groups, and I'm going to come around and help you fix the crap that you turned in and turn it into something good. Are we clear? And
Rook eye, Rook eye.
and that was the only time that whole semester I did that or had to do that. But I remember one students write reviews, which are the most useless thing is student assessments of their teacher because they don't know what they don't know and they don't know what they need to know. And one complained that I yelled at them all the time. It's like that was about 40 seconds of elevated voice. And then
Hmm.
I came around and calmly helped people get to work. And then the one group that I sat down with one group and they were, oh my God, oh my God. I said, calm down. You guys were great. What you turned in was really good, but I had to present that to everybody equally. Calm down. Now, all of us, this group and I can talk about how to make your work even better because you got a really good start. So, and they were all like, huh, huh, huh. So anyway,
It would have been
um,
an interesting strategy to tell the entire class that, and then go to each individual group and say that, you know what, I said that for the whole group. You guys did all right. We're gonna work calmly. We're gonna, and then it's everybody's afraid, but now everybody's like, oh, what a nice guy. He really respects me.
well, yeah, except some of the work was such shit. I had to
And you can still
tell,
fix that, but
yeah, but I had to. It's like you didn't read the directions, you didn't follow the template, you didn't format it, you didn't do the fucking work.
mm,
So anyway,
mm,
but the students I've had who were I've had some active duty, but also former military, and they were it's meet the specifications, exceed the expectations. The directions tell you which way to go, but not how far to go. And
mm.
they were great. I had one student who he was a senior, and as a senior, he was drafted by pro
Oh,
baseball team, and he had to miss the first couple of weeks of school for a mandatory training camp.
like a minors team or a
Yeah, he was
okay,
he was drafted into the minor team,
yeah, farm league.
farm league. And he had to go to that, and he did. So he came to my office hours before he had to leave to see what he had to do, get the syllabus, do the whole thing. And it was great. And I said, I'll make sure you get put on a team. And first day of class, I said, you got to put teams together. I got one student, and I got to tell you, anybody will be lucky to have him on his team because this is what he did, and this is where he is, and he's going to be great. And so he was on a team. Um, Last year was his first year in the majors.
Oh,
He's a
great.
starter in the majors now, which is
What team?
the Oakland A's.
Did didn't I read something? You want to get off on a tangent? Didn't I read recently that either Oakland isn't they're not going to
They
be calling
aren't.
themselves the Athletics anymore, or it's not they're
I
not in
think
Oakland anymore?
they aren't in Oakland. They're in West Sacramento. They're like an hour
Oh,
and a half or two
okay.
hours or something from Oakland. But so anyway, I agree with that. That the going right from high school into college isn't necessarily for everyone or post high school training. It's just a little bit of time, a little bit of time away, a little maturity, and then going back into it can also help people figure out what it is they want to do.
Well, I think it's certainly somewhat contingent on what kind of high school experience you had,
Yes.
but yeah,
But I think it
certainly.
would also, that's another benefit of something like compulsory national service would it would put together people from different educational, social, economic
Yes,
backgrounds who would have to work together. And I think that is also beneficial. It reminds me of the old, there was so many World War II movies with there's
right.
the Italian guy from the Bronx, and there's the Polish guy from Chicago, and there's
The
the
black guy and the
black
Jewish
guy
guy and the
eventually, yeah. And so eventually, like, in actually the 60s uh, TV series Combat,
hmm.
that was really good.
Oh, I remember when it became in color.
Oh yeah, I thought it was great in black and white, but yeah, it was. I remember it. It was as being really, really good and not easy, not
Pretty gritty
pretty gritty. Yeah.
for
Um,
the 60s.
but there is a benefit of that. And I remember some classes I had in, certainly in high school where, I could meet people who weren't just in the same classes,
Right.
the college prep classes. Um,
Well, I
I
think
think,
college is where a lot of people get their first sort of exposure to diverse, any kind of cultural diversity.
yes. Yeah.
So having that before college, when you're under the pressure of college,
Yeah.
might be beneficial. Certainly would. I mean
It
that
could be.
that
Yeah.
exposure is certainly beneficial in any case. Getting
And
it
with people you having to work with.
right,
Right.
right. So the we've got a little list of pros and cons here. So to kind of move this along, the con opposite this in our list says, where it says mandatory service provides a much needed bridge, as you've been
Right.
speaking about. It says volunteerism is a better experience than mandatory service. That is not a complete thought as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't think that is really either. Um, now the detail that follows in that summary said that 80 in 2023, 80% of young Americans were classed as unfit to serve in the military because of drug use, weight, or other mental or physical ailments. Um,
Yeah, I understand there's a bill pending to lower the bar basically and reduce the requirements of the entry exam to the military.
um, yeah, well, I think that I think if we're talking about military now, certainly the the need for conscripts into the military. They're not making the military's not making their enlistment quotas and
Right.
have been falling short for a couple of years. But the idea of bringing in uh, people to serve as soldiers who are unfit, untrained, and not as capable in a technological age is like, you know, grabbing a Revolutionary War soldier and putting him behind computer controls, uh, in some
Uh,
ways. Um,
well,
so
well, military service aside, the and getting to the direct point of the volunteerism is a better experience than
mhm.
mandatory service. I don't know if certainly one feels more compelled to contribute when it's a choice and you're not required.
Yeah,
Okay, certainly that's demonstrably true, but also volunteers can also feel like I don't have to do this. I could walk away anytime, and you're lucky to have me.
yeah. I think that they have a contract, but I'm not sure.
That well, that would make sense, like the military does
Yeah.
now.
Um, and certainly something like AmeriCorps, which is like the domestic Peace Corps,
Hmm.
they have more people applying for spots than they have funding or available spots. So, which says to me there's a need there, or something that people want to do. Um, I think that certainly among like Gen Z, they want to feel that what they're doing has a purpose.
Right?
Um, and well, yeah, I think the question is, I think there's a desire for it, but whether it's mandatory or voluntary is unclear. Um, I think the other thing that we should be mentioned is that, and if I didn't already, is that if there was compulsory service, non-military service, that should be for the same duration of time as the military and have the same benefits
Well,
that
and
accrue from it.
that was something I was going to bring up, but if they're having trouble filling the non-military, well, not having trouble they've got more non-military openings than they can fill, or
They've got more volunteers than they have spots available.
right, and the converse is true for the military,
Yes.
where they are falling short. What I had been thinking that, well, maybe if you incentivized the, but apparently we don't need to. What if you incentivized the non-military, this kind of non-military service? If you gave them a different incentive, say, um, whether it's monetary or uh, something like a GI Bill type of thing, where you
I think
could.
that, yeah, I think there should be a GI. If there was some kind of compulsory national service,
Well, I
including,
mean, if it wasn't,
there should be a
rather
GI
than
Bill.
making it compulsory,
Oh,
add greater incentive to this kind of
to
volunteer
volunteering.
work.
They need to since they have more people volunteering than they have spots
Right.
available, but there's so much to do. Why don't they increase the number of spots and the number of the organizations where people could do that, but make benefits accrue from that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like a GI Bill for non-military service.
Sure. And
Yeah,
it could still be
exactly.
GI just stands for government issue. So I mean,
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the GI
Um,
Bill would still apply. Um, no, but I think it's a great idea, and I,
yeah,
I
I
had
think,
to they'd done away with the draft and had kept selective service. I had to register for selective service when I was in high school,
yeah,
but they had but there was no longer any draft.
right.
But because it had only been a handful of years that the draft had been rescinded, nobody in my peer group knew what was going to happen, whether or
Yeah,
not, you know, um, somehow we were going to end up in the Middle East, in a war with the Saudi Arabia or something.
yeah.
And we didn't know if we were going to get called up or our number was going to get pulled or whatever. Um, I seriously considered, uh, I was recruited to both West Point and Annapolis and considered taking that route, going in as an officer if I had to go in,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I had a lot of friends who were musicians who, when their numbers came up, they auditioned for military bands
Sure.
and got in and did their service that way. And but because they had to volunteer, they were in for a longer stretch than if they'd been drafted, but they were in as musicians. So I knew people, gosh, all of the, I mean, the guys in the army bands had to do the regular um, basic training.
Yeah, right.
The Marine band, the guy I knew who's in the Marine band, they had an abbreviated boot camp for musicians.
Oh,
Instead,
that doesn't sound like the Marines at all.
it was six, he said it was 6 weeks instead of 6 months. He said, otherwise, they never would have had any musicians. There'd be no Marine Corps band. That's what he
Although
told me. So,
although my guess is that the Marine Corps band gets some pretty extensive training from just what I've seen of the Marine Corps marching band. They
oh, yeah.
probably get more than your high school band gets.
Oh, yeah. Those guys, all of the musicians and all the bands, they work. And I know people who went on to be, I mean, that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to be professional musicians, and they have done that. And
Hmm.
that was, they considered that a valuable launching pad for them.
Okay.
So, so, um, um, so, um, as you said, one of the arguments against was that it infringes on any kind of mandatory anything infringes on individual rights. Um, I think that there's another concern that's not listed in this list of cons, and that's who's giving the orders.
Hmm.
Because and this is getting us back into politics, of course. But if this were instituted now, um, I'd I'd be concerned that we'd have the equivalent of brown shirts running around, except they'd be wearing red hats, and that some kind of purity patrols or um,
Well,
uh,
if it were
people
compulsory,
checking checking people's citizenship papers or doing something as non-military, but you know,
paramilitary.
par kind of,
So you're saying you're afraid that these kinds of volunteers would be pressed into that kind
well, not
of,
they wouldn't be volunteers, they'd be compulsory.
or okay,
If we're talking compulsory non-military, that they'd be pressed into doing things that are supporting the current administration in
hmm,
ways um, that I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't. want them to have to do. Um, I think one of the things that we I think we touched on this is that if there was a compulsory non-military service or military, you have your choice, but that's it. You'd have a choice. Military, non-military. And of the non-military, would it be in your community? Would it be environmental? Would it be, what would it be that you would be doing? You should have a choice in
Well,
that.
if I were the secretary of this thing,
Yeah,
I would consider um, military. I would consider a certain amount of you've got some choice. You can't affect your choice, but there is an aptitude test for
right,
everything.
right.
You've got to, you can't just decide, I don't want to go be in the military. I want to do this. Well, you need to show a certain amount of affinity for that thing before you're allowed to just say, that's what I want to do. I mean, if you want to do it and you have some talent for it or whatever, and you pass a test, then okay, off you go. You know, um, one would hope that you are finding a spot in this service that will, because it's a limited time, you can't
Yeah,
be in it forever, that you're using this as a springboard, for instance, into some sort of career.
yeah,
Not necessarily, of course, if if you want to be, I don't know, if you want to be a musician, there may or may not be this kind of a, you know, public service for you to do. But not to say that you can't develop discipline in other things.
playing music for in retiree homes or hospitals or
Sure. Yeah,
whatever.
I'm
You know,
we haven't fleshed out what the possible
venue.
spectrum of these
Yeah,
jobs are.
exactly. Yeah,
I'm thinking more in terms of the New Deal type
yeah,
public works things where you go and you work and you do a job that benefits the entire community.
yeah. I think that's a actually an excellent um, template
Yeah.
for what we're talking about.
But
That
that was a lot of hard labor work for men who were used to hard labor.
yeah, there was a lot of that, but there was also like the artists who were designing posters and public artworks. There's a lot of
Yeah.
public art still that's still around that was created then.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, so there were a lot of those things. There were filmmakers. I mean, there were all sorts of things that people did. It was not limited just to hard physical labor. There were other things. I do remember a at my pre-induction physical taking a test, and I remember the person who was leading this thing said, if you've had any college, you cannot fail. We'll know you're faking. And I remember there were a couple of guys who were concerned about passing this test because they wanted to get in. And it was elementary
Yeah.
level. I mean, it was dead bang easy, except for one section, which was tool identification. There were drawings of tools, and I had no clue what these things were. Absolutely none, which is really funny because then quite a few years later, I went on to illustrate, do technical illustration, and I learned what all those things were and could probably identify them now. But I yeah, so there was a sort of a, but that was basic. That wasn't aptitude as much as can you actually hold a pencil
Are you
sort of
okay?
thing.
Well, and that would be another thing. If there another aspect of this is, um, I just read something recently about um, that the draft could nowadays, if a draft is reinstituted in, like you're saying, in the technological military that we have now, that someone with a physical disability could still serve and be
Yeah.
drafted. Um, flying a drone does not require you. Why do you have to go through basic physical training to pilot a drone?
Yeah.
So,
Or program a computer or write code or
yeah,
yeah.
right.
So it's a good question. But maybe those, and I think you mentioned Heinlein at one point, either
Yeah, with
in
Starship
this,
Troopers.
yeah. So everybody fights, nobody quits, right? Starship Troopers.
Right,
The path to service is the path to citizenship. Um,
right.
the
So in Heinlein's world, that whole, they talked about getting your franchise.
right,
But when you got out of the military, you had earned your franchise, which meant now you can vote. Now
yeah.
you can have a say in the country's direction because you put your life on the line for
Right.
it.
The the movie, which is often derided, because people took it seriously,
Yeah,
is actually a satire and critique of fascist governments and their propaganda.
well, yes. The movie took the book and tweaked it just enough
Yeah.
to make it a fascist satire. The book takes itself fairly seriously.
Yes. Yeah. It's been many years since I read it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But the book is literally about patriotism and public service.
Yes. Yeah.
And that those are good things and that if you're not willing to have a stake in it, you should not have your hands anywhere near the controls of it.
Yeah.
So,
See, I think there is a problem with it because I think everybody has a stake in it.
yes, I agree. But I'm saying this was Heinlein's
Right. That
what
was
Heinlein was trying to do with his
right.
book.
Right.
And what the movie makers used his book to do was slightly at variance with the what I got out of the book.
Yeah. I think you're right. So um I don't have an answer. I don't have, but this is certainly worth discussing, I think.
I
But
think that
again,
I think your original um, I think the compelling argument is what you were talking about initially. It's twofold for me. It's the um, giving you a certain amount of discipline and uh, ability to work towards a goal with a team of people, with a group of people,
mhm,
and exposure to a more diverse cultural experience.
yes.
I think those two things are enough to make it worthwhile.
Well, and that's what I tried to do in the classroom, by having people work together and um, and that was challenging a lot of times. Um, I think the if it was something that people had to do, and couldn't simply quit
Right.
or walk away from or sabotage the group without consequences other than a grade,
Hmm.
but I think that that would have it raises the stakes and so it makes it more important. I think the other compelling thing for me is making everybody's investment in the future success of the country and all the people in the country more personal.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Well, that's that exposing them to a diversity of culture and experience.
and I mean, there's no better way to bond with people by having to work together to achieve a common purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, some people work better individually, but you got to learn to work in groups too. So, um, yeah,
All right. Well, I think we've
Yeah.
discussed that, and like you say, we haven't come up to any conclusions. Certainly not a working plan.
No. And again, it's not something I would have. I'm less inclined to support it right now
Well,
because I I think that while I think that a lot of young people, particularly young men, would benefit from purpose and direction,
mm,
I think the benefit comes from the kind of things that we talk about in the virtues and not the things that would give license to their um,
baser urges.
baser urges. And I'd
Well,
be concerned that one of the volunteer opportunities would, or several of them, would be of nefarious purpose if
well, that
started
exactly.
by this administration.
Well, that's and you said it in your first sentence was purpose and direction. The
Yeah.
purpose and direction is important,
Yes.
and if the purpose is nefarious and then the direction is I'm
Yeah.
even worse, then yeah, we having the right purpose. I think, and we talk about politics a little bit, but I think we're going to need some kind of restoration of balance. Some checks and balances need to be re, restored, reinstated
Yes.
in our
Yeah.
federal government right now.
Yes.
And I don't, it's been a, it's almost funny to hear me saying it. I mean, the, but and I just saw a quote recently. I'm rambling a little bit, but uh, I just saw a quote recently that says every revolutionary becomes a conservative the day after the revolution is successful.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting sort of dichotomy where, but I think that the revolution now isn't about, we want to go all the way in this other direction. It's more about, no, can't we just get back to a
Can
more
we it's
cooperative?
more I think of it more as restoration than revolution.
Yes. But it feels like a resolution because of how far we've gone in the other direction
Yes.
and what it will take,
Yes.
I think, to restore it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like Gandalf said, we can only do what we can do in the times that we live.
yeah.
Or I'm paraphrasing, but you know. So anyway, I think we have discussed this pros and cons. If you can think of any more arguments, pro or con, for something like compulsory national service, mandatory service, however you want to call it, please add those to your comments.
Hmm.
And also like, share, and give us suggestions for what you'd like to hear us talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. We really use some.
Yeah.
So, that's it
So,
then.
yeah.
And
So, yeah. Until we see you next time, be thou
a good night.
and true.